matter where you stand on genocide, freedom of speech.
Sorry, can you hold the mic? This is more important than anyways. Sorry. Thank you so much.
No matter where you stand on genocide, freedom of speech issue is a right that we all have. So this is a turning point in the history and the freedom of speech.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As we tried to make clear in court today, what happened to Mahmoud Khalil is nothing short of extraordinary and shocking and outrageous. It should outrage anybody who believes that speech should be free in the United States of America. Mr. Khalil is a lawful permanent resident. He was coming home with his U.S. citizen wife, who is 8 months pregnant, and he was taken by U.S. government agents in retaliation, essentially for exercising his First Amendment rights, for speaking up in defense of Palestinians in Gaza and beyond, for being critical of the U.S. government and of the Israeli government. Those are the reasons why he was targeted. Those are the reasons why he was detained. And that's the reason why the government also moved him to Louisiana in further retaliation for the fact that on the night of his arrest at home, he filed a habeas corpus petition in this court, which he also had a constitutional right to do. In retaliation for that, he was moved to Louisiana to take him away from his lawyers, to take him away from accessing this court, to take him away from his family and his support network. And so every day that Mahmoud spends in detention in Louisiana is a day too long. We and he fully intend to vindicate not just his First Amendment rights, but those of all Americans, frankly, and all lawful permanent residents, and anybody who wants to speak out. It simply cannot be the case that you can be disappeared at night off the streets of New York City simply because the current U.S. government, the current administration of the White House dislikes what you have to say. That is, not just un-American, it's also unacceptable. And so Mr. Khalil and we will fight as hard as we need to in court to bring him home to New York City as soon as possible, and that's one of the motions that is now pending before this court, is a motion to bring him back home and to free him so that he can fight this removal case.
Ramsey, why did you not take the judge's invitation to argue the merits?
So we won't be answering questions right now, but...
Can you just tell us just how unprecedented something like this is? Can you just talk about that?
Look, this...
No questions yet.
Okay, just that question.
I'll just say this and I'll step back. It is absolutely unprecedented. The grounds that are being cited by the government for purportedly claiming to revoke his green card and putting him in removal proceedings. This is a person who is a lawful permanent resident. This is a U.S. person. Those grounds are vague. They are rarely used, and essentially they are a form of punishment and retaliation for the exercise of free speech. We think it won't fly in federal court. We think it won't fly in immigration court, and it certainly should not fly in the court of public opinion.
Why not raise that today? The judge gave you the option.
All right. Thank you, Ramsey.
Can you spell your names, please?
Baher Azmi, Baher Azmy, from the Center for Constitutional Rights. Mr. Khalil's detention has nothing to do with security. It is only about repression. The United States government has taken the position that it can arrest, detain, and seek to deport a lawful permanent resident exclusively because of his peaceful, constitutionally protected activism. In this case, activism in support of Palestinian human rights and an end to the genocide in Gaza. The government takes the position that because the Secretary of State finds his dissent unacceptable or contrary to U.S. foreign policy, he can be deported. As Ramsey suggested, it's largely unprecedented, save for ugly historical precedents, including in the Red Scare and McCarthyism. That's what we're talking about. We're also talking about a period of repression that the Center for Constitutional Rights knows well, following 9/11, when we were in the courts trying to get people out of secret detention. One thing that's different now is the legal infrastructure is so much stronger, and everyone out here on the streets knows that we cannot hide in the face of this amount of repression. We will be fighting in the courts and fighting in the streets to bring Mahmoud home and prevent this level of repression from spreading to many others, as the administration has threatened to do.
Why not argue the merits in court today, sir? The judge invited repeatedly.
Thank you, Bahid. Now we'll hear from Professor Joseph Howley, an associate professor at Columbia University.
And this is also on behalf of Amy Greer, who's in our firm, who has handled this case and will continue to handle this case, but unfortunately could not be here today. And the principles at issue in this case are, of course, of extraordinary importance, and my colleagues have laid that out here and in court. But as important as those principles are, our commitment to the case, the whole team's commitment to the case, and Amy's commitment to this case, is also about the human being, Mahmoud Khalil. He is a person who is loved, who is respected, who has earned that through his conduct and his commitment to his community and to all of us. We thank the people beyond the cameras who are here for their support. And we appreciate it, Mahmoud appreciates it, and ultimately the rest of this country and the world will appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to bring up Shaza Abdoushi Dalal, one of the staff attorneys at CLEAR, who will be reading a statement by Mahmoud's wife.
Hi everyone, my name is Shaza Abdoushi Dalal, that's SHEZA ABBOUSHI I am a staff attorney with the CLEAR Project and one of Mahmoud Khalil's attorneys, and I will be reading a statement on behalf of Mahmoud Khalil's wife, who does not wish to be named. My husband was kidnapped from our home, and it's shameful that the United States government continues to hold him because he stood for the rights and lives of his people. I demand his immediate release and return to our family. His disappearance has devastated our lives. Every day without him is filled with uncertainty, not just for me, but for our entire family and community. Our loved ones are struggling with the pain and fear of his sudden absence. And yet, we are not alone. So many who know and love Mahmoud have come together, refusing to stay silent. Their support is a testament to his character and to the deep injustice of what is being done to him. Thank you.
The government's position is that Mahmoud has views that are similar to Hamas, namely that Mahmoud believes in Palestinian human rights and the end to an ongoing genocide. And it is for that reason, as the White House and the Department of Homeland Security have said, that he has been arrested, detained, and potentially removed. So it's their disagreement with his viewpoint, not any remotely scintilla of security threat that's driving this. Again, it's about repression, it's not about security.
What would you say to all the...
I would add that, whatever flyers the White House spokesperson may have been talking about, that has certainly not been the government's position in court. And so I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, that the White House spokesperson says a lot of things that are unsubstantiated, not just on this case. I would pay attention to what they actually, put forward in court.
Can you speak to what Mahmoud is doing, how he's been in court, or been in Louisiana?
As you can imagine, these are very difficult circumstances. Mahmoud and his wife, the last thing they expected was for something like this to happen. They had every reason to expect stability. He's a lawful permanent resident. She's a U.S. citizen. They're about to welcome their firstborn child next month. That's what they were thinking about, not this scenario where he's abducted, coming home at night, and rendered to a location 1,000 miles away by the U.S. government on account of his speech. In light of that, Mahmoud, of course, is a fighter. He's been a prominent advocate for Palestinian rights. He's equally unbowed. He's in good spirits considering these circumstances, and he looks forward to being back here at home in New York.
What are the immediate next steps? Immediate next steps.
The questions about immediate next steps. We will be filing amended papers demonstrating joined by our colleagues from the ACLU and the New York Civil Liberties Union, filing amended papers that substantiate in more detail the unlawful nature of his detention, and thereafter we'll pursue an expedited schedule to have the court hear his demand that his detention is unlawful and that he should be released. And we will also be dealing with the government's claim that this court is not the proper venue, and largely at the same time over the next week.
You're understanding legally why you're saying what they're saying publicly versus what's happening in court is two different things. What is the legal reason here for what the government is explaining to you why they're doing this?
How are they justifying it?
Yeah, the government, as far as we understand it, is relying on a rarely used provision in immigration law to justify the detention of a lawful permanent resident and its placement in a removal proceeding. It is a provision that basically says that if the Secretary of State determines that a non-citizen's presence or activity in this country poses a serious risk of adverse foreign policy consequences potentially, that person can be processed for removal. Now, of course, that provision is not only rarely used, it is certainly not intended by Congress to be used to silence dissent. In other words, the times that it has been used to, for example, prohibit the visas for folks who have, people who have interfered with democracy in their home countries, former officials. Those are the kinds of scenarios where you see that law used. It is not intended to be used to silence pro-Palestinian speech or any other speech that the government happens to dislike. And for that reason, we believe that this case is not going to set the precedent that the government wants it to set, whether it's in federal court or an immigration court. And you already know just by looking behind you that it's not having the effect that the government wants it to have on people's solidarity with Palestinians.
What would you say to students who are afraid to protest?
So the question was whether we can confirm that he sent an email to the president of Columbia University the night before he was arrested and detained to basically put the university on notice that he was feeling unprotected by the university and that he was worried about detention by ICE and doxing and actions by private actors. He was in fear for his life and well-being. That is accurate. He did send that email to the head of Columbia University, and I think his email raises an important question. This is a university that has spent the better part of the last year talking about its duty to protect students and to keep them safe. But in a scenario where numerous students are being approached by ICE on Columbia's campus, and one Columbia student, Mahmoud Khalil, has been effectively disappeared by U.S. government agents, again, on Columbia's property, the university has been remarkably absent and silent.
Student at Fordham, one more question, please. Student at Fordham, one more question, please.
Right here. Come on.
Thank you all. We're going to wrap up here. For any questions regarding details about today's speakers, you can come to me or Jen here. And I want